Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. Israeli forces have injured at least 400 Palestinians in Abu Sabi mountain in Beida town and Nablus city in West Bank city. Palestinian Red Crescent Society says soldiers shot 3 Palestinians with live fire, including one who was shot in the mouth. Palestinians were protesting against the illegal Israeli settlements. The Taliban say they have a right to react if the US keeps troops in Afghanistan after September 11th deadline. In an interview, Taliban spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said Washington's such a move will be a clear violation of the Doha deal. He said the Taliban are providing secure passage to US forces as they withdraw and the group will not attack them. Earlier, a US media report suggested that at least 650 troops are likely to remain in Afghanistan for diplomat security. In U.S. state of Minnesota, former policeman Derek Chauvin has been sentenced to 22.5 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. The judge said the jail term is based on Chauvin's abuse of a position of authority and trust. Chauvin was convicted by a jury of second and third degree murder and other charges last month. The U.S. drug regulator has added warning labels to Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines to indicate the rare risk of heart inflammation. Meanwhile, Brazil has registered over 2,000 deaths from the virus and more than 79,000 cases overnight. In Pakistan, 36 died while over 900 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 180 million people. In Niger, armed assailants have killed 19 civilians in the western Talabri region near the border with Mali. The local mayor says 3 people were killed in the village while others in the fields. The region is riddled with terrorism as 137 civilians were killed in March and 100 in January in suspected ISIS attacks. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Israeli forces have injured at least 400 Palestinians in Abu Sabi mountain in Beida town and Nablus city in West Bank. Palestinians were protesting against the illegal Israeli settlements. Palestinian Red Crescent Society said soldiers shot 3 Palestinians with live fire, including one who was shot in the mouth. It said 69 Palestinians suffered rubber-coated steel bullets. Palestinians have been staging protests since early May after settlers occupied Abu Sabi mountaintop and installed an outpost there. Meanwhile, in the west of Salfit in central West Bank, colonialist settlers burned dozens of fig and olive trees. The Taliban say they have a right to react if the U.S. keeps troops in Afghanistan after September 11th deadline. In an interview, Taliban spokesperson Sohail Shaheen said Washington's such a move will be a clear violation of the Doha deal. He said the Taliban are providing secure passage to U.S. forces as they withdraw and the group will not attack them. Earlier, a U.S. media report suggested that at least 650 troops are likely to remain in Afghanistan to provide security for diplomats. Meanwhile, the Taliban claimed to have captured the Khorak district of Kandahar province. Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid said a large number of tanks, weapons and ammunition were also seized. President Joe Biden says U.S. support for Afghanistan will be sustained despite the pullout. He made these remarks during a meeting with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and Chief Negotiator Abdullah Abdullah at the Oval Office. U.S. President said the senseless violence in Afghanistan has to end. Biden reiterated that Afghans are going to have to decide their future. For his part, President Ghani said Washington's withdrawal decision is a sovereign one and it is Kabul's job to manage consequences. He said the Afghan forces have prioritized their actions and are fully prepared for their job. Ghani claimed Afghan security forces had retaken 6 districts from the Taliban. The president called on the Taliban to agree on a ceasefire and engage in a political settlement. Meanwhile, in an interview after the meeting, Abdullah said peace talks should not be abandoned despite surging attacks unless the Taliban themselves pull out. The UN nuclear watchdog has asked Iran for an immediate reply on whether it will extend a monitoring deal that expired overnight. In a statement, the International Atomic Energy Agency summarized a report by its chief to its 35-nation board of governors. Chief Rafael Grossi stressed the vital importance of continuing its data collection on some of Tehran's activities. Responding to the remarks, Iran's envoy in Vienna, Qasem Gharibabadi, said Tehran is under no obligation to provide an answer. On May 26, Iran and the agency extended the deal for a month, allowing the watchdog to collect data on some of Tehran's activities. A U.S. State Department official said Iran should engage the agency for it to monitor Tehran's compliance with the 2015 deal. However, Iran's foreign ministry said Tehran will only return to full compliance after the verifiable removal of sanctions. Earlier, the U.S. and France warned that time is running out for Tehran to revive the nuclear deal. In Niger, armed assailants have killed 19 civilians in the western Talabri region near the border with Mali. The local mayor said 3 people were killed in the village, while others in the fields. The region is riddled with violence, where militants previously focused attacks on security forces. However, in recent months, terrorists have been drawn into local ethnic conflicts, leading to greater violence against civilians. 137 civilians were killed in March, 100 in January in suspected ISIS attacks. In Mali, 6 soldiers have been killed while 13 UN peacekeepers have been injured in 2 separate attacks. Malian army said one of its soldiers were also wounded in the attack in the Mopti region of central Mali. Meanwhile, a car bomb targeted a temporary base set up by the peacekeepers near a village in the Gao region in northern Mali. German Defense Minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer said 12 injured belonged to her country. In a statement, she said 3 German peacekeepers are severely wounded. The area has an active presence of insurgents linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The UN mission in Mali has deployed over 13,000 soldiers to contain violence by armed groups in the north of the country. In the U.S. state of Minnesota, former policeman Derek Chauvin has been sentenced to 22.5 years in prison for the murder of George Floyd. He was convicted by a jury of 2nd and 3rd degree murder and other charges last month. The hearing began with prosecutors asking several members of Floyd's family to address the court. The judge, Peter Cahill, said the handed jail term is based on Chauvin's abuse of a position of authority. He said his decision is not based on public opinion, but it is important to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. The prosecutors had asked for a 30-year prison sentence, while the defense was seeking probation. At the White House, President Joe Biden said the sentence seemed appropriate. But Floyd's brother and his nephew criticized the sentence as a slap on the wrist. However, the family's lawyer, Ben Crump, termed the court's decision historic, saying it brings the nation a step closer to healing. Before the sentence was handed down, Chauvin himself briefly offered condolences to the Floyd family.
At this time, due to some additional legal matters at hand, I'm not able to give a full formal statement at this time. But very briefly, though, I do want to give my condolences to the Floyd family. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind.
Floyd's murder last May triggered the Black Lives Matter movement across the U.S. and the world. The German defense chief has lauded Pakistan's efforts for regional peace and its role in the Afghan peace process. General Eberhard Zorn said this during a meeting with Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Berlin. In a statement, the military's media wing said regional security situation and matters of mutual interest were discussed during the meeting. It said the two officials also discussed the latest developments in the Afghan peace process. General Bajwa said Pakistan Army will benefit from an expanded defense cooperation with the German military. He added that it will have a positive impact both on bilateral ties between two countries as well as on regional security. Pakistan has logged 36 new deaths from coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said the nationwide tally of fatalities has surged to 2,188. The ministry said 935 people contracted the virus overnight. The country has reported over 953,000 cases and nearly 890,000 recoveries so far. There are over 32,000 active COVID cases and nearly 2,000 of them are critical. The ministry says Pakistan has administered over 14 million doses of coronavirus vaccines to date. The U.S. drug regulator has added warning labels to Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines to indicate the real risk of heart inflammation. Meanwhile, Brazil has registered over 2,000 deaths from the virus and more than 79,000 cases overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 180 million people. More in this report. As more fatal and more transmissible variants of the coronavirus spread around the world, the political and other controversies keep stirring up. Canada projects cases to decline rapidly over the next 2 months, but Delta variant risks causing a greater than expected resurgence later this year. U.S. health officials have paused Eli Lilly's antibody cocktail therapies distribution as it failed to show effectiveness against beta and gamma variants. Experts are weighing the need for booster shots of Pfizer or Moderna for Americans who received Johnson & Johnson's one-dose vaccine. Meanwhile, World Health Organization said not supplying poor countries with vaccines is a mistake.
The world, as international community, as the world is failing. As global community, we are failing. We're repeating the same mistake as HIV/AIDS, which took 10 years to reach the low-income countries after it was already rampant in high-income countries.
Health Body's chief Tedros Ghebreyesus warned that the Delta variant has already spread in at least 85 states. Police in India's Mumbai and Kolkata cities say some 2,500 people received fake vaccines. India's richest state, Maharashtra, ordered malls and cinema halls to close, while more corpses are washing up on the banks of the Ganges. In Australia, Sydney is set to enter a hard 2-week lockdown as authorities try to contain a fast-spreading outbreak of Delta variant.
Well, I think people should prepare for the news that we've given them to date, which is the situation is worsening beyond what we would have liked to have seen this morning. And the reason for that is that the new exposure sites are outside of those areas of concern we'd highlighted.
In Indonesia, over a dozen fully vaccinated doctors died of COVID-19 as the country battles a rash of severe cases in inoculated medical workers. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Canada, authorities have officially named the U.S. right-wing militia group 3 Percenters a terrorist entity. Canada's Public Safety Minister Bill Blair says the group has an active presence in Canada. He added that the group poses a significant threat to domestic security. Blair said the group aims to recruit members of police with military training and pointed to their role in U.S. Capitol riots. Authorities have also put leading neo-Nazi activist James Mason and British group Aryan Strike Force on the list. In Ethiopia, 3 employees of a medical charity have been killed in war-torn northern Tigray region. In a statement, the charity said its Spanish branch lost contact with the vehicle carrying the team on Thursday. The charity Doctors Without Borders said the workers' bodies were found the next day near their vehicle. The agency strongly condemned the attack and vowed to investigate the incident. The UN called for Ethiopia to launch a swift investigation into the killings. The US also called for an independent probe and said Addis Ababa bears full responsibility to ensure aid workers' safety. However, Ethiopia's foreign ministry said regional rebels are active in the town where the attack occurred. At least 12 aid workers have been killed since fighting broke out in Tigray in November between center and former ruling party. In Germany, 3 people have been killed and 5 others wounded in a knife attack in the central town of Wolfsburg. The regional interior minister said all those injured are in critical condition and authorities fear for their survival. Police say the Somalian national attacker was overpowered after being shot and injured. They said his condition had been noticed in recent months, including violent tendencies. The police added a few days ago he was put into compulsory psychiatric treatment. They said the attacker is now being questioned at a hospital. In Colombia, a helicopter carrying President Ivan Duque has been struck by multiple bullets as it flew near the border with Venezuela. However, a spokesperson for the presidency said no one was injured in the attack. The incident took place when the helicopter was flying through the Catatumbo region towards the city of Cucuta. It was also carrying the defense minister, the interior minister, and the governor of Norte de Santander. President Duque denounced the cowardly attack, saying he is not frightened by acts of terrorism. The U.S. federal government has announced to sue the state of Georgia over new voting legislation. Republican-controlled state legislatures passed the laws in March after Donald Trump called his defeat in presidential election a fraud. The Justice Department's decision amounts to the first major action the Biden administration has taken following the Republicans' voting restrictions. According to Republicans, the restrictions are streamlined voting procedures, but the Attorney General says the laws were enacted with the purpose of denying or abridging the right of Black Georgians to vote. The Justice Department also issued a mandate to prosecute threats to election workers. The world's first deep-sea semi-submersible oil production and storage platform has started production in South China Sea. Situated 150 kilometers off the island province of Hainan, the platform will help with the production of gas and oil. It is equipped with about 200 sets of oil and gas production equipment. The gas fields have estimated reserves of 100 billion cubic meters of natural gas. They will supply a quarter of the gas needs of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area. China has announced its goal to peak its carbon dioxide emissions before 2030 and become carbon neutral by 2060. The U.S. government says it has no explanation for dozens of unidentified flying objects seen by a military pilot. A report on the UFOs submitted to Congress encompasses 144 observations of unidentified aerial phenomenon since 2004. The 9-page report failed to determine whether they are advanced earthly technologies or of an extraterrestrial nature. It noted unidentified aerial phenomena pose a clear safety of flight issue and a challenge to U.S. national security. The report stated that UAPs reportedly appear to exhibit unusual flight characteristics in some cases, but links them to the possibility of sensor errors or observer misperception. The report said limited data leaves most phenomena unexplained, adding they require rigorous analysis. Spaceship company Virgin Galactic says it has received approval from the U.S. aviation safety regulator to fly people to space. The company says it has more than 600 reservations for 90-minute flights. The flights include several minutes of weightlessness, which are priced at $250,000 a ticket. The company's shares surged as much as 40% to over $56 after more than doubling in value this year. The latest approval puts pressure on Virgin Galactic's rival SpaceX in the nascent and expensive space tourism sector. In Russia, students in St. Petersburg celebrated the end of the school year with the scarlet sails at the annual White Nights Festival. The festival normally welcomes millions of people. This year, it was limited for school-leaving students only due to the pandemic. A large fireworks display accompanied a ship with scarlet sails along the English and Admiralty banks to the Winter Palace. The event first took place in the 1960s. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.